cardio sucks for losing weight, but it has a lot of other benefits that are super helpful toward you, and that's kind of what we're going to be going over today. So the main thing that a lot of people get wrong about cardio is they assume that just by doing cardio they're going to lose more weight, and the problem is that even if you're doing more intense cardio, it still takes a lot of time to burn even like 100, 200 calories, and it's just significantly easier to cut a lot of foods that have a large number of calories instead of trying to, just do an endless amount of cardio. But doing some amounts throughout the week can be extremely helpful for making sure that your body is healthy, especially for your heart and how your blood is going to flow through your body, to make sure that you always have an appropriate amount of oxygen for when you're trying to do exercise. And this has a lot of, long-term health benefits, depending on the type of cardio that you are going to try and do. The main thing that a lot of people, I think, miss out on is honestly zone 1 and 2. Zones are kind of based on the actual heart rate that you get to while doing an exercise. And this is also really important because it means that if you are less experienced in cardio or if you are more out of shape, it actually takes less for you to do more intense cardio than someone who, has a lot more cardiovascular strength already. It's going to take more effort for them to get to like higher heart rates because their heart is just stronger. So this is something that over time you may have to progressively overload, similar to, things that can do with weightlifting or other strength training. But instead it's going to be progressively overloading it by decreasing the amount of rest that we have, increasing the intensity of what we're doing, increasing the total amount of time that we're doing it across the week, or just changing what method of cardio we are trying to do. There are kind of 5 main cardio types based on the heart rate that you're going to reach. The first is more of just like, it's called zone 1 through zone 5 for these. The first is zone 1 cardio. For most people, this is just like casually walking. Pretty much anything where you're active, but you're not necessarily pushing yourself hard, is usually going to be zone 1 or zone 2. And this basically, just helps your body maintain a higher heart rate and higher metabolism throughout the day, but it doesn't necessarily challenge you that much. So you can do it periodically throughout the day, and it's not really going to leave you sweating that much or struggling, which is why it's very good for weight loss, because you can just incorporate this pretty much wherever through the day, and this is kind of what you'd want to do if your goal is just to lose weight. Above that, though, we have zone 2, and this is probably what you should do the most of intentionally if you're trying to include cardio. And this is something like a light jog or swimming, or kind of like a sort of a moderate speed on like a bicycle. And this is where your heart rate is between 120 to about 140 beats per minute for most people. So the main benefit of this is that you can sustain it for a long time. In a lot of cases, this can be very social. You can kind of do this while still being able to sort of talk to other people, but it starts to be a little bit more challenging to kind of communicate while doing it. But it is something that you can maintain for a long time, and it's going to significantly improve your resting heart rate, significantly improve your metabolism, and significantly improve the blood flow that your heart is capable of getting, oxygen throughout your body. Beyond that, through zones 3 and 4, this is, I think, what most people consider to be cardio. And this would be like running, like a very fast cycling, what most people do on the treadmill, where they're pushing pretty intensely, maybe a rowing machine. And this is stuff where you're starting to really struggle to actually maintain it and be able to kind of communicate or anything like that, this is where you're really starting to get out of breath. But the more you practice this, the longer that you're going to be able to maintain that. And so that's where you get a lot more benefits for kind of athletic things when you're starting to do this. This is also where you'd probably see, if you're doing sports, a lot of times you'll jump into these ranges, and that can definitely, improve things long term, but it's still usually very fun, and a lot of activities will fit into here. And beyond that is zone 5, and this is basically, for most people, it's going to be 180 beats per minute of heart rate, up to the maximum that your body can maintain. And this is true max effort, like high intensity interval training or HIIT. This is sprinting. This is like races. This is pretty much anything where you're just going all out. And that also means that normally you are not able to sustain this for a long time at all. I think there's something where it's like you can't maintain a true sprint for more than like 7 seconds, where it's just when you're doing a max effort thing, your body very quickly runs through some of the like high intensity energy reserves that you have before it starts to become more of an anaerobic or aerobic activity. As well, weightlifting can definitely fall into this, especially if you're not used to it. But it does depend on time under tension and other factors there as well. But for this, if you're trying to structure a zone 5, the reason that you're normally doing that is to improve like the maximum effort and the maximum cardio that you can put out. And so normally it requires long rest periods in between to be able to get these short bursts of maximum like 190 beats per minute intense workouts. So to kind of go over some examples of how we can include these in our day, zone 1 and 2, that's a lot of, for most people, it's going to be walking, maybe kind of a brisk walk, up to like a light jog if you're more healthy in cardio and at a lower weight. Swimming, just kind of leisurely, can also be very good, as well as, biking very leisurely can be very good for this too. And that's something where ideally you'd be getting almost 30 minutes per day, but you can get most of the benefits in closer to like 2 30-minute sections per week, for zone 2 at least. When we go all the way up to like a zone 5 max intensity, that's something where like a session of 10 to 15 minutes per week is going to get you most of the benefits. And good exercises for that is going to be something like sprints, which can be structured very similarly to lifting, where you'll have like 3 sets of like a 100-meter sprint, or like 5 to 10 sets of a 40-meter. And this is where you're just absolutely max out, going as hard as you physically can. Ironically, I have also hit zone 5 for much longer than what might be healthy, which might just say a lot about my cardio more than anything. Doing Beat Saber. Some of the hard maps for that are actually kind of insane, and when I have tracked my heart rate, it really jumps up. It's kind of wild. But that might be an option for you for zone 3 to 5, depending on the difficulty that you're trying to do with Beat Saber, or some other games that are more intense that get you to sweat a lot. And the other thing that can be very good for zone 5 is like interval training. So a good example of this is something like a HIIT workout or high intensity interval training, which is where you have like a jump rope, or you're running and you're going as hard as you can for a short interval, like 10 seconds, and then you back off and you're going at like a minimal speed, or you're just stopping for maybe 10-20 seconds, and then you're doing it again. So an example might be 10 minutes on an exercise bike, where you are pedaling for 10 to 20 seconds, and you're just going as hard as you can. And then after those 20 seconds, you just keep your feet on the pedals. You just stop. You completely rest for 10 seconds, and then you go and try and push as hard as you can again. Yeah, Beat Saber gets wild. And for zone 3 to 4, honestly, a lot of things can end up putting you in this range, so I don't think it's as necessary to try and include it specifically. I think any very active activity, so like sports or even when you're doing your workouts, will normally put you, somewhere between like that 140 to 180 range. It's not, unless you're kind of actually doing something a little bit more casual or really pushing yourself, that I think you get outside of this range for kind of the zone 2 or zone 5. But zone 3 is mostly going to depend on how long you're able to sustain the exercise for before you feel like you need a break. So kind of for a sport example, if you're playing basketball, there's probably moments where you're going really hard, but then you're going to go take a break for a little bit. It's like, yeah, I'm just going to catch my breath. I'm kind of getting tired. And that might be something where you're getting a little bit higher into like the zone 4. Whereas, if it's like soccer or football, for anyone who's not an American, that would be a good example of like a zone 3 where you're just kind of maintaining this higher level activity. It's not quite zone 2, but there's very few points where you're really just going all out as hard as you physically can, or, even close to that. By including all of these different sorts of cardio, you can burn some calories, but of course, as we kind of mentioned in other coaching like group coaching calls, the main thing for fat loss is always going to be your daily activity, which is more like a zone 1, and your diet, of course. Those are the biggest factors by far. But, for longevity, having a good resting heart rate and maintaining a strong heart is very important for a lot of things. And it is something that can also definitely help you, improve your quality of life and improve the length of your life if you're adding it appropriately. As for how to best track this, as I kind of mentioned with the different activities, I think those are good examples. You can kind of try and base things on that for what zone of heart rate it might be for an activity that you're doing. But if you want to be certain and track it, if you're at the gym, for example, on one of those like fancy exercise bikes, a lot of those will have the heart rate trackers on them, or if you like hold on to the handles, it'll show you your heart rate. If you're outside of the gym, something like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or an Oura Ring can also track that, and that can be very healthy. And as well, it is definitely worth mentioning that, of course, if you are starting out and you haven't really done this, and especially if you are like higher in weight, over 200, 250 pounds especially, you are going to reach higher zones of exercise very quickly. And as you get lower in weight and as you improve your cardio, it will take more to actually get to, more intense zones. So, for example, if you're, higher in weight, you're just starting, you might think that you need to jog to do a zone 2 cardio, but in actuality, it might literally just be a brisk walk gets you to 120 or so beats per minute of heart rate. And that's all you need to actually start getting to kind of cardio, is just going to be like a brisk walk. Whereas, as you get more advanced, it might take, swimming or cycling or jogging. And of course, kind of a last thing to mention, if you are significantly overweight, I don't recommend running or jump rope at all. The reason for this is that they're what's called very high impact on your joints, where essentially, like with running, you're essentially jumping from one foot to the other. And if you're at the point where you weigh, like if you weigh 400 pounds, the extra weight on your body is exponential for how hard that's going to hit on your joint when you're running or jumping. And so something like a jump rope or, running while it might seem like a good idea to burn calories and practice cardio, it can be very hard on your joints, and that can cause other problems. And if you end up getting injured, that makes it significantly harder to lose weight because you're going to be restricted in what you can do. So instead, I definitely recommend cycling, especially with an exercise bike. Those are very nice because you can set the resistance very easily, and a lot of times they let you track your heart rate with them. Or swimming. Those are both very good. And beyond that, if you have a VR headset, Beat Saber is extremely good. And sports may also be an option if you have other people that you want to play with.